everybody. Welcome to Overcoming Average. Tonight is a special night because we are in quarantine, stuck in our homes, supposed to be social distancing. And so I'm socially distant from my friend and neighbor, Michael Scott, here. So just to kind of snapshot where we are in time, at the time of this recording, it's the night of April the 5th, 2020. And the coronavirus pandemic is wrapping around the globe as we speak. Just to look at the stats, it's 1.272 million cases in the world and 69,000 deaths. In the U.S. alone, it looks like there's 336,000 cases with just under 10,000 deaths. So we're in the throes of this thing, and it's sort of interesting because we're new to the neighborhood, and it's really opened my eyes to how awesome neighbors are. And if you've got good neighbors, you're thankful for them. So Michael's my neighbor, and we got to talking, and I invited him on the podcast, and hopefully we'll be doing more of these quarantine episodes. So Michael, thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So we talked about different things that we could go over. And obviously the coronavirus is a big one, but I was just thinking to kind of not stray too far away from the norm, to just kind of get to know you, because I know you and a little bit, but I've only met you in like September, I guess it was, when we first moved in here. So yeah, I'd like to just hear your story. I typically, in some sort of roundabout way, will ask people like, where'd you come from? How did you get here? And then where are you going next? So why don't you just, take it away? Where'd you come from?
Absolutely. Thanks again for having me here tonight. I appreciate it. And where I came from, that's a little bit of a long, drawn-out story. We've
got plenty of time.
Yeah, there's nothing but time being quarantined. So I was born in Riverside, California. And then at a very early age, I was about 18 months old. We moved to Washington, D.C. My dad was a Air Force guy and job relocation there, so we moved to the D.C. area. Grew up there through elementary school, and then during middle school made another move to West Virginia. My dad was originally from West Virginia, and at that time, my grandfather, my papaw, I called him, he was going through some difficult times with his health and stuff. So in middle school, we moved to West Virginia. I went to school there for 7th, 8th, and 9th grades. Then from there, made another move back to the D.C. area, back in Maryland, but this time on the Northern Virginia side. Finished out high school there, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. And throughout high school, I was a big basketball player. That's what I put all my focus in. I really enjoyed it, grew up with it my whole life. So with that being said, from finishing, completing, graduating high school in Northern Virginia, went to Chantilly High School there. I went out to California again for college. I hadn't been back to California since I was born, but I went out there for basketball to Cal State Northridge in the Valley. So went out there, studied business, and when I finished up with my college playing career, I became a assistant coach on the team there for a couple years. And then
you said at Cal State Northridge?
Yep. So California State University at Northridge.
Okay, cool.
They were actually known for a big Northridge earthquake they had there. I think it was like in '94 maybe.
Oh wow!
And it was pretty high on the Richter scale there. But so from California, I was a coach out there for a few years, and a few things changed here back on the East Coast. My dad had retired, and they were living back in West Virginia at the time, shortly before they bought a house here in Lake Norman area in Mooresville. And so I came home one summer to kind of just spend some time with them and reflect, and decided this is where I wanted to call home. So 2006 it was. I decided to make North Carolina my home.
Now, what brought your parents here?
So my dad was at the Pentagon. He was working there in the D.C. area. Then he took a job out in California when I was actually out there for college. And then from there, he had some health issues, had to have open heart surgery. And
oh, wow.
So he ended up getting out of the military after 37 years. I guess it was kind of time for him.
No kidding.
So I came home one summer from California. Like I said, decided to call North Carolina home, and I've been here proud North Carolinian, I guess
Awesome.
they say, since
Yes.
2006. So
Man, that's a lot of travel.
it was, yeah, and I enjoyed every step of it. I think every stop taught me something different.
Yeah.
From California, some of my best memories were in West Virginia.
Yeah.
Spending those years with my papaw, and we were on a 40-acre farm, and we raised probably a 2-acre garden every year.
Really?
And that was something. My papaw really had a green thumb, so that was
Yeah.
interesting to learn from him. That was a lot of good years there.
Cool. So, yeah, it's funny. One of the last guys I had on was from California, and you have that. All those places kind of encapsulate you, like a little bit of California, a little West Virginia. So it's awesome.
I'd like to think so. I try to be laid back, like the California lifestyle sometimes
Yeah.
can be at the beach and
Right.
stuff. But get my work ethic from working on the farm.
That's right, yeah.
Kind of funny story about that. These guys, we didn't at the time. We didn't have any cattle out there. No cows or horses or anything to feed. So our excess hay every year, we sold it off. And these two country boys came up and they said, "Hey, we'd like to buy your hay." And we had just cut it and we were baling it in the field, so it was laying out in the field, square bales. And my dad said, "Okay, well, and they came to agreement on the price and all that kind of good stuff." And my dad said, "You want some help picking it up?" And the guy said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, we could drive the truck for you." The guy said, "Well, that'd be great." He said, "That'd give us two, one guy on the ground to throw it up and one guy to stack it on the trailer." And my dad looks over at me, and I think at the time I wasn't but about 8, 9 years old. And he said, "Hey, go ahead, hop up in there." And the guys looked around. They said, "I think these guys crazy or what?" And he said, "Oh, he's fine." The guy said, "Well, the only problem is the stick shift." My dad said, "That's all right." He said, he'll figure it out. He knows what he's doing." So sure enough, I went in there and I'd get down so close enough where I could push the the clutch in and put it in first gear and slowly let it out. And boy, we took off. Then I'd had to pop up over the steering wheel so I could see where I was going. But I just kind of kept it steady right down the middle of the hayfield, and they were throwing the hay bales on and stacking it. So,
Oh, that's classic. Yeah,
pretty funny.
I was reminiscing about my grandfather today. He passed away about 3 years ago. He's 100 years old, and I grew up on a dirt road and gravel road, and we had to like scrape it, and so we would go to Grandpa's house and borrow the tractor. But it was like this big field tractor, like with attachments on the back. So there was no like trailer to haul it around. So I drove the tractor on the main roads with like a bush hog attached to the back, to go and drive it over and scrape the driveway. So, I look back at those times and think, man, that's kind of what made me who I am today. So
absolutely, I reflect on those all the time. This morning, my wife and I, we were listening to some older country music back from the 80s and 90s, and which was that time frame that we're referencing for West Virginia. And every time I hear certain songs, it just reminds me of the back roads of West Virginia. It was Route 20 that we used to take, and my papa, spending time with him, and it was, like you said, that's what framed us into who we are today.
That's right.
Those memories.
So tell me a little bit more about the basketball. So you played and then you became a coach. So what was that like?
It was awesome. Like I said, I grew up idolizing Michael Jordan. I mean, I loved everything about him. Just his tenacity on the court, his level of competition, his work ethic. I really like that word, work ethic, just whether it's in sports or life. I think, having a good work ethic is a lot. But anyway, just growing up, and then when I hit high school, I started receiving some smaller offers from Division IIs or Division III schools. And for whatever reason, well, I know what reason, I just always wanted to be the best. I wanted to go Division I. That was always my aspirations. And college-wise, when I was much younger, probably in middle school before I got into high school, I was always a huge Kentucky Wildcat fan. Rick Pitino was there. I used to go to their summer camps, and that was kind of my dream. But as high school progressed, I realized I wasn't on that level. Just in terms of just athleticism and height, I stand at maybe 6 foot on a good day, and that wasn't going to cut it at the Division I primetime level. But anyway, I told myself I wanted to play Division I, and I worked my tail off, and sure enough, I was able to walk on my first year at Cal State Northridge, and later earned a scholarship there. Wow. Pretty funny story about that. It was the first day of practice, and I remember the head coach, Coach Bobby Braswell. I hope you're doing well, by the way. He came up to me. He said, I just want you to know something. He said, now that you're on the team, he said, I can't stand walk-ons. He said, I doubt you make it a week. And I just said, yes, sir, and acknowledged him. But in the back of my head, I said, there's no way this guy's going to run me off. This is my lifelong dream, and I'm going to make the most of it. So anyway, fast forward, we were having morning conditioning at 5 a.m. and, sometimes 2 days with weights and then study hall in the evenings. And we were starting to feel it. We were getting to a couple weeks in, and it was no longer fun. It's fun that first day back, but after a while, you're ready for the games. And we were kind of in that transition period process of that. But anyway, we were, I don't know, a week or two in, and we came in the gym, and I don't know, I got there like 4:30 because I just had this fear of oversleeping. So I'm 4:30 in the morning walking into the gym. So I just go ahead and turn all the lights on. I wheeled the balls out, and coach walks in and looks around. By that time, some of the other guys were there, so he didn't know who had turned the lights on. He said, who did this? And slowly but surely, I raised my hand like I didn't know if it was a good thing or bad thing. He said, okay. And he always called me by my last name. He said, okay, Scott. He said, I'm not going to run you off. And I said, no, sir, you're not. And he just kind of smiled. And from that point on, I kind of knew that I was accepted by not only him, but the teammates. They knew, okay, this guy's not just a walk-on. He's part of the team and family.
That's awesome.
Now. So anyway, so college was great. I don't say this often, but maybe every once in a while when I reflect back on it, I wish I might have went to a Division II or Division III school simply because I'd have got more playing time. I didn't play a whole lot there. I definitely was a role player. I spent a lot of time on the bench, but I was okay with that. I mean, I was there to be a teammate, and I've always considered myself a good teammate for everyone. So, well,
that's an accomplishment, man. It's I admire people that make it high levels in sports of anything, because I think the most I ever played was like church ball or something. So
it's funny, it's either with sports. A lot of times, if you have that passion and drive, it's there, but if you don't, that's okay. I mean, there's other alternatives. And I tell you, being a basketball player consumed a lot of my college career. People are like, oh, what'd you do for fun? Nothing. Rested, we relaxed. And a friend of mine on the weekends, if we did have any free time, we used to go to the self-serve car wash and just wash our car. And we found that relaxing. We just sit on a bucket and clean each wheel nice and slow. And that's how we got away. So it's definitely a different lifestyle when you decide to go down that route.
Yeah, so going back to your traveling and stuff, your dad, you talked about him earlier, about he'd be a great podcast guest. So you said you enjoyed the traveling and the moving around. How did that affect you, or did it at all?
I don't think it did. I don't know if obviously being 18 months old, I'm not sure that I was able to process over moving at that time, but maybe subconsciously, because later on the moves, I don't know, I was almost an advocate for it. This is another interesting story. You're bringing back a lot of good memories for me here tonight, so that's good for me even.
Yeah.
But the move to West Virginia, I basically lived in D.C. my whole life from the time I was 18 months old till, middle school, and never really traveled outside of that D.C. area, so that's all I really knew. We took a trip to West Virginia. Like I said, my papa had some health things, and so we were going to go out there and help take care of him. And we look at this farm, and when we were looking at it, I couldn't wrap my head around, because again, I think in the transition between 5th and 6th grade. I couldn't wrap my head around that one person could own 40 acres. All I knew was the city of Maryland and D.C. area. And I said, so you mean all the way up to that fence and all the way up over that hill and down here by the creek and back? And they're like, yeah, one person, this would be our property. And then obviously the price point was, I couldn't believe that you could have 40 acres for the price they were asking in West Virginia compared to what DC, you get a small house and it's 3 times the cost.
Oh yeah.
At least. But anyway, so that was an interesting move back to West Virginia, but I just, I don't know, everywhere we went, I found the good in it. We talked about this the other day too, whether people are introverts or extroverts. And I've always been an extrovert, and maybe it's because of the moves, but I just found a way to make friends quickly. Yeah. From West Virginia, moving back to Northern Virginia, that was a little hard because I left between my freshman and sophomore year. So I'd just gotten into high school. But I think everything in life is somehow intertwined and related. In this case, it was sports. So sports was an easy avenue. The minute I got to my new high school in 10th grade, I went and started playing basketball with the guys at pickup. So you just, it was easier for me for that, to have basketball there to create friends. So that made the transitions easy.
Yeah. And, I named the podcast originally Overcoming Average because nobody wants to be average, and I look for those little things of like, we've all heard the stories of, well, I'm screwed up because my parents moved one time and it ruined my life, whatever. So I'm always curious, to see where you're like, you found something to cling on to kind of push you through that. And I totally get it. Basketball's your thing. You come in, you're confident, you can go pick up another school, and you're right back in. You've got friends, you've got a coach to look to, you've got, instant community.
Yeah.
So that's overcoming, because that can damage some people, I think. But that's good to hear that was with all that moving. I mean, it's a surprise to hear that it wasn't that big of a deal. So.
Yeah, and that would lead into that. No matter what it is in life, right? I mean, people adjust and handle or react to certain situations totally different. Two people can witness the same exact car accident, let's just say, for example, and one will walk away and be like, oh my gosh, have nightmares forever. And the other person just like, man, that was hard to see, but I'm okay now. Like, and they just rebound quicker. I mean, we could relate that going back to your initial intro of this to the coronavirus right now. Yeah. Some people are, in our opinion, may be overreacting. Some may be underreacting by not adhering to the social distancing that they should be. I don't know. Just people handle things differently. So.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So keep taking us through your story. So you got us up through college. What happened after the coaching, I guess?
So after coaching, I moved to the Carolinas. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I didn't plan on making the move. I was hoping to get into coaching. And I actually interviewed several times with Davidson College here locally where we are with Coach Bob McKillop. And I just couldn't – we could spend literally all night on just talking about the man that he is. He's got some very awesome stories. I consider him a master motivator. I worked some of his summer camps for the younger kids, just trying to get my foot in the door there. But anyway, so we're fortunate to have a great basketball coach right here in our backyard at Davidson College. I know he's had opportunities to go on to higher Division I levels, but he likes it home here. And then of course we'd be remiss if we didn't mention Steph Curry coming from here.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone knew he was great in college, but I don't think anyone could have foreseen him having MVP years in the NBA. So
absolutely.
Anyway, that's pretty cool. So I started trying to get coaching jobs. Applied again with Davidson, UNC Charlotte, some of the local schools. I didn't bother with Duke or North Carolina just because there's a waiting list of 30 years long there of only players. So anyway,
we don't like Kentucky fans anyway.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So the coaching thing didn't work out. I couldn't find my footing. Had a few opportunities at high school levels and stuff, but I was at that point established in my mind a certain threshold I was willing to settle for or not. And so anyway, I turned my attention to real estate. I had a friend of a friend, and we got to talking one day, and he said, "Hey, have you ever considered real estate?" And I said, "Never even thought of it." And he said, "Well," he said, you're an extrovert like we talk about, and you're not afraid to talk to people and stuff. You want to give it a shot?" And I said, "Sure." I said, "I'm looking for something new since I've moved here to the Carolinas." So I did that, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. Honestly, I really have. It's got its ups and downs like any career out there, but to be able to assist people in the purchase or sale of their home, which is in most cases the single biggest decision they'll make in their lives.
Yeah.
There's a lot of responsibility comes with that, and I really cherish that opportunity to try to make that transaction as smooth as I can.
Yeah, when I first met you, I remember, we were just doing the small talk, like, what do you do, this, that, and the other, and, I told you about my brother who's into, I don't know, what do you call it, lending, or,
mortgage lenders, yep.
It's like mortgage lending, so I'm even still figuring out the pieces of the puzzle, but I know with moving recently how important, gosh, the real estate agent, they play such a big part of your comfort level in buying a home. And, and I do want to get into also kind of what's happened with the coronavirus and stuff eventually. And we could probably do a whole nother podcast just on that, maybe with even recommendations and specifics. But yeah, one thing that I remember about you in particular is that you're, I don't know if you'd call it a niche, but like you kind of know the whole ball of wax, like the financing, the house, even a little bit of the construction, a little bit of the remodeling part. So you can bring more to the table than just one person that kind of knows a little piece. So yeah, the thing, and I want to go back and talk about sports again for just a second, because sports is an interesting thing. it plays such a huge role in our society in everything, especially in because there's kind of a line you draw in sports where it's like, there's an age where it's like, if you haven't made it to whatever goal by 18 or 20, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. And it's such a slim margin. I mean, the fact that you played D1, I mean, there's very few people that get to do that, and even fewer people that go on to be professionals and make money doing it. But there's so many people that push their kids to do that, to get scholarships. I always have leaned towards, like, I think people should be giving away like academic scholarships, people to write code and come up with medicines or something like that.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, it's such an important piece of our culture, because it is so strange during these coronavirus times where we're isolated at home and there's nothing to watch on TV other than pre-made, Netflix and Hulu and all that, which everybody's killing. But there's no soccer, there's no football, and the poor XFL, by the way, their first shot and they got
timing.
Yeah, the timing couldn't have been worse.
Yeah,
but the NBA is delayed, the NHL's delayed, Major League Baseball's delayed. I mean, it's absolutely unprecedented to hear that. But all that to say, bringing it back to like real estate, I learned kind of early on, even as a musician, I was never huge into sports. With college basketball, we watched the Tar Heels growing up. When I was really young, Charlotte had no professional teams. We got the Hornets way back in like 89. Mm-hmm. We got the Panthers. So then it became now we have a team to invest in, because back then, I mean, the world has changed so much in sports where it was even hard to watch. I mean, if you were a Michael Jordan fan, you couldn't watch him on TV unless you had the sports package or whatever. Like the TV package to be able to watch him.
That brings me back to West Virginia, by the way.
Yeah.
All they had there was these huge satellites. They didn't have at the time the small mini dishes or anything. Yeah. And I just remember like searching for signal, and you could like open the window and hear it outside, and it's like, rotating on its axis.
Really?
No reception, no sports channel. So anyway, that's pretty. Yeah, we didn't have access to sports then like we do now.
Excuse me, but yeah, where I think it really ties in, since it's such a cultural community of, hey, did you watch the game yesterday? Did you see the fight? Whatever. It does play into a lot of our jobs nowadays, where if you can just kind of shoot the breeze or have a little camaraderie with another sports fan, man, you might land a deal. You might, get along with somebody better just because there's a little bit of that connection. So
golf is great for that.
Yeah, that's a great. Yeah, golf is awesome for that. But yeah, I totally see like pretty much every salesperson I know that's an extrovert. They like some sort of sports or played sports. So anyway, yeah. So back to your story.
Well, a couple of things that I'll piggyback off. It's interesting. You said there's no sports on now, and it really is. It's like you just don't realize how important it is. I saw somebody post the other day, and they were used to complain about a noon kickoff game for college football. They're like, just give me a 8 a.m., 9. It doesn't matter anymore. Right. We just want something. And then a few weeks back, we caught the end of the iRacing for NASCAR. And I found myself watching it again today just because there's not much else on. So we're literally watching NASCAR drivers sit at their homes and virtually race, spin each other out. And but it gives us something to watch. And
yeah, I mean, and I don't want to go too far down that rabbit trail, but I think that might be some of the future of what we're looking at is some virtual. People already watch what's his name, Ninja, on YouTube, watching kids play video games, and I don't understand myself, but I know a ton of people are into that. So, hey, maybe we'll be watching virtual baseball and virtual basketball.
Well, basketball, actually. So they haven't started virtual basketball per se, but they were showing NBA players playing NBA 2K and broadcasting it, and they're having a tournament as we speak. Awesome. Yeah, there were some games today. I tuned into it for a minute just to see. But anyway, yeah.
That's awesome.
It's interesting.
Yeah, so bring us back to your story. So you got into real estate through just a friend, or how did you get into that?
Yeah, another realtor, a friend of a friend, and we just got to talking. He said, "Hey, you're not afraid to talk to people, and that's what this business is about, is relationships." And I said, "Great, I love talking to people, learning about people, and if I can help them along the way as well, just that's an added benefit for me, and that's what it's turned into." And then taking it back a little bit to you were talking on, I kind of do a little bit of everything. And I think that helps me. That gives me a leg up on some of the other realtors out there because there are a lot of good options, but the thing that helps is I flip houses on the side. And so I'm able to learn the structural issues and electrical things. And I know kind of what to look for in a house. Oh, is there like a different, just a slightly different color on the ceilings? Well, that's going to indicate there was maybe a leak at some point.
Right.
Has that roof leak been fixed or not? But it just kind of helps me along that process. And then the mortgage side, I've got a great mortgage lender that I typically refer most of my business to. I work with several different ones, but I love picking his brain and asking, okay, how do we get qualified for this? How do you do that? Because I do want to be somewhat knowledgeable on that to be able to at least provide the right option for somebody to get in contact with somebody that can truly answer all their questions.
Yeah. To tangent for a second, what are your thoughts on the coronavirus and the effect that it might have on mortgages, on people being able to get mortgages? Where do we stand with that, or do you even know?
Yeah, so it's an ongoing thing right now, and it changes every day. What is going on? So it's important to not just take something you hear one day and run with it forever, because tomorrow morning we could wake up with different things. But a few things I did want to touch on. I know a lot of mortgage lenders are posting on social media some information that may not be 100% accurate, and they're doing the best they can to get information out that is valuable during this time. But one of the things I was reading was that it can affect your credit score by taking a mortgage forbearance, which allows you to do a lot of different things. Typically, a forbearance is where you suspend payments for 3 months or 6 months, and some of those options are still available on a case-by-case basis. But there are also other options out there that will not affect your credit. So, and every lender is different. You've got some of the banks, you got the Wells Fargo's and Bank of America. So it's important to a couple of, and I'll piggyback off of something I heard earlier on one of the news outlets, but it was that when you call your mortgage lender, have a very candid conversation with them. Don't say, hey, next month I'll be able to make your payment if you know you're not going to be able to. And that sometimes is a tough pill for anyone to swallow, to say, I'm not going to be able to do this for a while. But just be as honest with them as you can. Let them know, hey, maybe you got laid off, and realistically, you don't think you'll be able to make a payment for 6 months or a year, whatever it is. Just transparency is good right now.
Yeah.
And then to jump into some of the things that are available, I pull this directly from Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, which are FHA loans, and those are backed by the federal government. Some of the options on what they're calling a loan modification, they can adjust your rate. Actually, they can, if you had an adjustable rate mortgage known as an ARM, they can now turn that into a fixed rate mortgage and give you a better interest rate. And there's always criteria with these. Credit scores and things like that. You and I talked briefly before we came on here, but something that was really interesting to me is you can go from a 30-year loan, which is kind of standard, to a 40-year loan. So think about if you're going to end up paying more interest. So,
sure.
But to give you temporary relief, your payments would significantly see that and help you tremendously during this time.
Is that a new thing, a 40-year? I've not heard of a 40-year before.
Nor have I. So I'm eager. I pulled this up today just in trying to gather a little information, but I will certainly do some more research.
Yeah.
Typically, if anything, you want a 15-year or
right.
even a 10-year to try to pay it off quicker with
sure.
less interest. But
and
so
the ARM thing's interesting as well, because again, I'm a Dave Ramsey guy and I talk about it a lot, but he always encourages shorter, if you can do 10 or 15-year fixed rate. So with the ARMs, that's interesting that they could lock it in, at a good rate these days. And
absolutely. They understand that when I say the mortgage lenders, the banks, even the FHA loans like I was talking about for the federally backed loans, if they don't work with their customers, with their consumers, then they run the risk of having to eat a lot of foreclosure properties. That's what it could turn out if people simply can't make their house payments. And in this case, it's not by choice. It's because of this unfortunate virus that we're all suffering from. So they're trying to work with you, and that's why we have the flexibility right now to have a candid conversation to say, listen, I'm really hurting on my payments. What can we do to help me out? And they'll do what they can. So to summarize this little portion of it, I just want to say, don't believe when you see on social media that it's going to affect your credit score, or that you can't do a loan modification, or you can't do certain things. The other thing that they were saying was that, let's just say, for example, they were to grant you a 3-month forbearance. In typical times prior to this, if you ever had a forbearance, typically when that 3 months expired, you were due to make one lump sum of those 3 months, basically to get you current in 3 months. But there are other programs available that they're doing strictly for the coronavirus to say, okay, hey, we'll allow you to start making payments again in 3 months, but instead of having to pay it all at that one time, we can kind of, delegate that money and decipher it down the line further, whether it's over the next 6 months, or maybe you just make 3 additional payments when your loan was going to end, so they just tack it on completely at the end of your loan. There are options available. Don't be afraid to make that phone call to your mortgage lender, to your banks. Have this discussion with them, and hopefully we'll relieve a lot of stress from, because there's a lot of stress right now. Last thing you need to do is worry about your finances in your house. So make that call, and they'll help you out.
So let's talk about the forbearance a little bit more. Is that something that's been around for a while, or is this sort of a new? Because again, I haven't heard of that either, and these are unprecedented times. So, from what you were saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, that just basically means we're going to kind of pause things for a little while, and we're going to put those payments on the end while we get through this rough patch. Because it's my opinion that this coronavirus thing is a temporary disaster. There's going to be a lot of disaster from it, a lot of deaths, but I do believe it's temporary. So there should be no reason why the economy couldn't jump back. People get their jobs back. We start going back to restaurants and concerts, and sports picks back up. The money starts flowing again, so you could obviously pay your mortgage again. So if I wanted to do a forbearance, who do I go to? Do I go to my lender? Do I call Bank of America? Where do you even go to start that process?
Yeah, great question. So go directly to your lender. But when I say that, a lot of lenders, and I won't name them on here, and because it's not a bad thing. I just to leave names out of it though. But a lender, you may get your loan through them when you first purchase your home, and they can sell your loan to another company. So then you start actually making your payment go to a different company than the original lender that you were with. So just whoever you are making that current payment to, and you should get a billing statement, whether it's online or through the mail. Reach out to them directly, and they are prepared to handle these questions. I mean, obviously, we're a little bit into this whole process. And
so basically, whoever you are paying your mortgage to, normally call them first.
That's correct.
Because actually, that happened to me, and I won't mention the names either, but we started with one company. It was kind of a no-name company that handled the process of the mortgage in the beginning, and it was immediately sold. I think within the first month, it was sold to a big bank. So in that case, go to your bank, whether it's one of the big banks or is it credit unions do those as well? Or?
They do, credit unions, and then there's just actual mortgage lenders out there. That's all they do, and then you have your banks as well. So
yeah, I mean, honestly, that's a good option for people because these are crazy times. I mean, who knows? And again, going back to what can you believe on the news? I mean, I saw a little snippet of news tonight that basically said we may see the highest unemployment ever. I have a hard time believing that those numbers are going to be accurate, but who knows? I think it depends on how long this goes, because eventually, if nobody can do anything, people, there's money's going to run out. So, so we'll see. But yeah, either way, I'm proud to see people stepping up. I mean, I know some of the medical companies are waiving all fees for coronavirus testing, co-pays. So it's good to see banks and lenders even make these options for people to say, hey, we know you're good for it. You've been a good, borrower so far, so pay us in the future.
Absolutely. You're talking about the market rebounding, and no one knows for sure. We don't have that crystal ball, but I do definitely agree with you. They say it could be like a U shape or even a V shape bounce back. So that would be relatively quick. And hopefully it is. I mean, because obviously, it goes without saying, but the sooner we're back to some similar or some normalcy, the better off everyone's going to be. So.
Absolutely. So let's just kind of theorize for a second and say it does take 6 months. What is that going to do? to the housing market? I mean, do you think there's a possibility that we'll see people that do have cash on hand buying cheap property, foreclosures? Is this going to be another 2008 sort of scenario, or do you feel like it's going to be just totally different than that?
I think it's going to be different. And again, a lot of that is going back to the timing you mentioned. So the longer it drags out, the worse it gets. But the longer it drags out, the more the banks are going to be willing to work with us, hopefully, and the lenders. And as long as that's going on, you're not going to see foreclosures. Now, what you may see, obviously, if people are job insecurities, might see fewer people listing their homes to sell and also purchasing, because they're just like, well, let's just hang on to the house we've got. Let's not sell and upgrade like we talked about doing until we know how this is all going to play out in the economy. But I tell you right now, I'm surprised the market is pretty steady still.
That's great.
With the exception of Mecklenburg County, which is where we're at, you can still show properties. You're still out. You're supposed to obviously honor the social distancing, and there's some new guidelines and procedures in place. But real estate is still going strong. People are still out looking, and I tell you, it's kind of interesting. I've been working with a couple different couples currently as buyers. And they were getting a little discouraged because the market there was just so hot that any house that went on the market that was priced right and staged and the marketing was great, multiple offers, getting above list price in less than 24 to 48 hours. So this has slowed down ever so slightly the buyers that are out there. So now if you go look at a house, well, in Mecklenburg you can, but if you virtually see it online,
right,
you can put an offer in and feel good that you're not going up against at least 4 or 5 in most cases. So if you're looking to buy with interest rates as low as they are right now, I mean, they're for a 30-year fixed mortgage, they're floating around like 3.5, somewhere in there, depending on credit score, which is tremendous. But with low interest rates, and then the fact that your competition in buying it is a little slow right now. There's still people out looking. So if you find the right one, you got to act.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's a good time to buy.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about this the other day. My parents have told me this, and you kind of reassured that what they were saying is accurate. Is in the 80s, the percentages were like 18, 19%, something like that, which is just insane. And I'm sort of like, if you've got a job and you feel like it's steady in a market that's not affected by this, and you're looking to buy, the interest rates are not going to get much better than they already are. I mean, this is great the way it is now. So I would say, totally different if you're in an industry, the restaurant industry or something, your company's tanking or whatever. But yeah, if you're looking, because I experienced that as well. I mean, we were looking for homes for months, trying to find the right place, the right neighborhood, the right distance from schools, all these different factors that everybody's looking for. And we lucked out. We love where we are now. My brother, he would put in bids above asking price and get outbid by somebody.
Yep.
And it was just crazy. And it was disheartening. I remember him and his wife were like, man, we're never going to find a home that we like, because if we find one, we can't even pay more than they're asking for it and win it. We're getting beat out by whoever was paying for them. So, yeah, I'm trying to look at this whole thing and try to look at the bright side of like, what's the big picture? Dave Ramsey will tell you, if you look at the stock market, I believe it's if you take a 10-year snapshot of any point in time, there's always an increase, even through the Great Depression, 2008, any 10-year span.
Interesting.
It's always a plus. So it's just a timing. No matter what happens, we're going to rebound. Things are going to come back. People are going to get their jobs back. I know locally, the coffee shops, the restaurants, I mean, they've got a couple of hours wait to go pick your food up. So people are still buying food. Restaurants hopefully are keeping their doors open externally, at least. So, things are going to shift. Amazon just hired, I think, 100,000 people. So
it's interesting to see that, isn't it? I mean, they're already so big and large, and now they're going to get bigger. So,
and Zoom is totally blown up. I mean, people are finally realizing, like, wow, I can do my job and be at my own house and not commute, save money on food, save money on coffee, So it's going to change everything. And I'm trying to look at the positive side of, like, how can I hopefully start to spread a little bit of positivity of like, let's look at some of the bright side of this, and not just constantly look at the death, because it's easy. I look at the stats every day. But yeah.
So going back to spreading a little positivity, I think one way to make people feel good is if the market does bounce back like we anticipate, to this U shape or V shape versus, it kind of coming down and being a long drawn out process. I get this question all the time right now. Hey, do you think there's going to be an opportunity to get a good deal on a house? Our home value is going to come down some. And at this time, I say no. I think that as long as, again, the mortgage lenders are working with us, people are able to maintain their homes. I don't see a bunch of foreclosures coming. That's what they're trying to prevent at all costs.
Yeah.
Then what's going to happen is the people that were considering buying prior to this, they're going to be itching once the economy and the markets kind of bounce back a little bit and we're able to get back to normalcy. They're going to start spending money, and there's going to be somewhat even more of a shortage of inventory in the real estate market.
Yeah.
I looked earlier, and right now in this Mecklenburg area, there's only a 1.3 month supply of inventory. And in a balanced market, we want to be somewhere between 4 and 6 months. So we're nowhere near that. And that's now. I mean, February, March, time frame stats. But anyway, if the market bounces back, I think real estate there'd be a shortage of inventory, and I think that's going to drive prices even a little bit higher. So if you're in a house right now like we are, I think we're in good shape, especially in a new build subdivision. So there's some positivity. Now, on the dark side, if you're looking to buy right now and you're looking for that good deal, it's not really out there, and at least not yet. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. Man, that is hot. 1.3%.
Yeah, 1.3 month supply.
1.3 month. I mean, yeah, wow. That is hotter than I imagined. That's good, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, and
bad in other ways.
And then everything has like a trickle down effect. So we haven't seen the effects, and we won't for at least another month or two in real estate for the numbers. But that was the month of February, and then March stats should be coming out here any day now.
Wow. Yeah, my brother told me, if I may misquote him here, but they had one of the best months of his new company, I think in February.
Refis probably, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, home sales were great, and then February we started getting a wind of the coronavirus, and maybe people look to refi, maybe pull a little extra home equity line of credit out for some extra money, just in case things got to the point where they are now, unfortunately.
Yeah.
One other thing you were talking about was the interest rates, how they used to be so high, like 13, 14, 15%. Another misconception that I take this opportunity to share is that a lot of first-time home buyers, or even people with less than perfect credit, they think that they have to be, high 6s, low 7s. And you can actually get approved for a FHA loan with as low as a 500 credit score. With that, you got to put 10% down, and there's not many lenders that will do that. But also impressive, you can have a credit score of around a 580, and with 3.5% down, you can actually qualify for a home loan. So,
wow.
So I think that's awesome to know. A lot of times when you're a new, first-time home buyer, maybe you just haven't established credit yet. I mean, sometimes it's hard to do, getting that first credit card, a few things in your name. So so don't be afraid to reach out to a mortgage lender and see what they can do to help you on that. And then also, while we're on this topic, conventional loans. Big misconception with that I love to address. A lot of times people think that 20% is required for conventional loan. That's not true. You can actually get a conventional loan with as low as 3% down. Now, with the 3% down, what you may have is you could have your property mortgage insurance, known as PMI, or you can do away with that where it's lender paid PMI. And what they do is they add on either typically somewhere in the range of 1/4 to 3/4 of a percentage point to your interest rate. And then so it's kind of offsets it a little bit. Yeah. But I can assure you that the difference in that 1/4 point, depending on credit score, is a lot cheaper than paying your mortgage insurance on your home, because that can be costly for sure. So there's a lot of great options out there, loan packages, and we could have a whole podcast on that as well.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I know this is off topic, but I'm big on personal responsibility. And honestly, some of those notes are really good to hear, just because you hear people that have a tough time getting a home or getting loans. The coronavirus has unveiled a lot of things about not only our country, but our personal spending habits and our debt. Not only the country's debt, but our personal debt or business debt. Like Cheesecake Factory, they came out and said something along the lines of like they didn't have enough to pay their people for like 3 weeks, which is like, whoa, that math doesn't, you can't even afford a month.
Right.
So that's really eye-opening to how thin the margins are on some of these companies. And personally too, I mean, if you can't survive 2, 3, 4, 6 months, you need to save more money. And, you know, the good thing about all this is, yes, you can afford a house, but, you know, one of the things, honestly, that scares me about that 40-year is some people would try to get into, you know, a 100-year loan if they could to try to get the cheapest price on the biggest mansion that they can afford, not knowing how much they're paying in interest, not really knowing the numbers, not really considering like, I can't really afford this. Like I can make the payment, but I can't afford it. And, you know, I was raised sort of that Dave Ramsey style that, you know, if you don't have the cash in your hand, if you don't have the cash in your pocket, you can't afford it, period. And of course a house is a little bit of a different thing, but I still think that if you are in the house market, be wise, look at that mortgage that you're going to be paying and try to think, okay, what's something that's comfortable where I could pay for it, and if there was a disaster, it wouldn't totally sink me with 1 month's mortgage. So
I tell you, you're going to lead me down a rabbit hole here we'll never get out of. But so many different thoughts on that. That was well said. Yeah, you and I briefly talked on the overspending that just as Americans we do, right? I mean, like we see things and we're like, wow, new shiny object. I have to have that. This is, like you said, this time has given us an opportunity to certainly reflect, to realize what we need versus what we want. Because with the, you know, uncertainty of everything, it makes you think, I don't need that right now. That can wait a couple more months. You know, definitely. You know, you mentioned about buying a house that's maybe too much. It's funny. It was even before my time and your time as well. But, you know, families used to have like 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms and have 4 or 5 kids.
That's right.
And those kids turned out okay. Like they're doing great.
Yes.
And in today's society, I find it interesting, and I'm guilty as charged as well. But I'm out showing families properties, and let's just say a standard family has 2 kids. So
Sure.
I meet with them and go over what their preferences are in the home and what they're looking for. And with 2 kids, they're like, well, we need at least a 4-bedroom or probably a 5-bedroom with a bonus and an office. And I'm thinking to myself, all these families aren't looking to expand that much, but they just feel like every kid is entitled and should have their own bedroom. Now, if that's your preference, great, and that would be mine as a parent.
Sure.
But at the same time, it's not necessary. And going back to your point, I think this whole process will maybe make people realize maybe we don't need as big of a home in general, right? We don't need 5 bedrooms and we only have 2 kids plus a bonus and an office and all these things. I know it's made me more grateful for what I do have.
Yes.
And I cherish the little things that are gone from us, hugging family and not being able to see them and supporting businesses. And, you know, the next time a server messes up my order now, I'm definitely going to have more patience. Like, I'm just thankful to be out right now.
That's right.
You know? So it's been a real eye-opener. And, you know, it's easy, I think, again, you and I talk a lot of just about life in general, but it's easy to find negativity in life and not always easy to appreciate what's right before us and what we have. And again, this time is allowing us to do that. I mean, but it is tough. There are some people that are really struggling, especially if you've been unfortunate and lost your job. I can see where that stress would mount, but just, I guess, as a message of hope from us, right? We want people to look for happiness and know that we will get through this. Certainly things have happened in the past that have been worse than this. And as a country and as a nation, we'll get through this, and we'll look back and be like, hey, I was tough enough to survive that. So we'll be able to pat ourselves on the back.
Well, you know, I had talked to you about the book study that the guys and I are doing, just some guys, and hopefully you'll be able to join in with us next time. But Unfortunately, it kind of paused with this whole thing because I can't socialize with them anymore, which is just hard. It's so weird to even say that. Like,
hearing it.
People that I see, 2 times a week now, I haven't seen them in 6 weeks or something like that. It's just incredible.
Man.
Actually, my good friend Rick, who's been on the podcast a couple times, last time they came over to the house, we were cooking out, and I remember that morning, I was like, what's with this coronavirus? And I looked at it. At that point in time, there were like 1,000 cases in the U.S., and I started a little journal of like how this has progressed. So it's crazy to see how quickly it's ramped up. But
it is interesting to see, right? I mean, again, you and I talked at first, and I think we were of the consensus that people were overreacting.
Right.
Now we're probably somewhere in between. We're not overreacting, but we're certainly not underreacting any longer. We realize that this is getting pretty serious, and
Well, and you hear stories. I mean, it's hard to listen to the news because if you want to find it, you can find out about Bigfoot got the coronavirus and is on a ventilator.
That's true with anything. I mean, no matter what side of the political thing you're on, if you want something to support your belief, you can find it.
You can find it.
Yeah. So you're right.
But and I don't want to see it come closer to home, but I think it'll let us know for sure. Like, okay, this is really bad, or it's not. And I know a neighbor up the street here who works in in the cancer area, oncology. He says he hasn't seen any cases come in because they're trying to isolate those folks that are struggling with cancer, and they're trying to stay away. But his friend, so now it's like third party, like my neighbor's friend has the coronavirus. He's 47 years old and he's on a ventilator. And he said he wasn't like the epitome of health, but he wasn't like a out of shape guy. He's on a ventilator at 47. He's now off of it and he's kind of recovering, but it's still to think like, wow, 47-year-old on a ventilator is super scary to think about. But
it is.
But to go back to the book study, I was going to mention, people are like scared of bad things, and I am too. I don't want to experience bad times, loss, death, pain, suffering, consequences. I don't want that. Nobody would step up and say, I want to go through some bad things. But I'm thinking about a Bible verse that, I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, but I'll fear no evil. Like, we're going to walk through those valleys. We're going to walk through some bad times. But every time something bad happens, it's really hard not to open your eyes to how awesome we have it. I made the joke yesterday, actually. We ordered a sandwich from a restaurant, and it's a high-class restaurant. It's awesome. Kindred Restaurant, shout out here in Davidson.
Yes.
And they have a spicy chicken sandwich with sea urchin mayonnaise. And, of course...
I'm hungry.
Which is really good, by the way. I wish I could be there eating it, but we had a drive over, pick it up. And when you walked up, I was working on my shelves in the office here. And I remember thinking, how bad can it be if I'm ordering a chicken sandwich with sea urchin mayonnaise, and going to have it delivered at the curb for us, So looking at those things, you're right, like to hug the loved ones, that we still have while they're here, to talk to them and hear their voices. Like, it's made me open my eyes to, as a father of 3, to the time that we're spending together as a family is definitely taxing. It's definitely taxing. It's rough. There's no downtime. There's no alone time. Even, and I, as a dad, like I've kind of joked with other dads, like, sometimes it's nice, the little respite of like, hey, I'm going to go to Lowe's for a while, or I'm going to run out to the store, and you just, take a couple minutes to yourself or make a phone call without the kids screaming in your ears. And that's been taken away, those little things. But to look at to my girls, they don't know any different, man. They're just excited. A neighbor here had a social distancing outside gathering with her kids yesterday, and they're all sitting 10 feet apart in lawn chairs with a fire in the middle. And my middle daughter Finley, she said, "Dad, something great has happened." Miss Molly has invited us to her party. And to hear that, man, it just melts your heart, and to think like the innocence that they don't see, the nervousness, and they're walking through those days, and so they're walking through that valley. And again, a lot of people that know me will know I'm not a positive person, and I'm not necessarily. I probably would lean towards negative. I'm like more of a melancholy personality.
I like to call that a realist.
Yeah. I'm realistic.
Yeah.
But deep in my heart, I think I am. I am positive. I look at like, hey, this is good. This is a good day. And even though in that moment of frustration with the kids and with, my wife's trying to like do this e-learning at home, so it's tough. It's tough. Those moments are tough. But a real good friend of mine said, if you think about some of the worst times in your life, or like really, really bad moments, it's hard. They were so short. Like you can barely remember them. Like I remember times in my life when I had no money and a tire would blow out, and boy, I just felt like I was going to explode. Mm-hmm. And I think back now and I think
it was a day. It was a blip on your radar of your overall life. Yeah.
And absolutely. So for those who are nervous about the coronavirus, be nervous to an extent. Be cautious, I would say. One of my old workout buddies, we talked about this. He had a scale. I wish I would pull it up and if I could get to it quickly, but he was talking about 1 through 5, people being like, so I'm going to get the virus. I'm staying at home. I'm never talking to anybody. A 2 would be like, I'm pretty nervous. You should follow the rules and stay home. A 3 is more like, some of the stuff the government's putting out is legitimate, but some of it's a little exaggeration. Like it might not be as bad as they're saying. A 4 is more of a, the things kind of blend out of proportion. We should probably wash our hands, but just continue about business. And a 5 is just, hey, this is a Chinese hoax and the whole thing's a big joke or whatever, and it's just a ploy to destroy our economy. So in the neighborhood, I've noticed just us, we've been rating ourselves as 1 through 5. Dave across the street here said, my wife's totally being a 1 today.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we should be, well, and actually, I don't know if I ever mentioned the point of that article when he wrote the 5 types is to be considerate of those categories, to say, if you're freaking out and you feel super nervous, I'm not going to shame you for that. You feel free, like do your thing. And if you think it's like a total hoax, well, okay. And I would encourage both, like, let's look at the data together and like, let's come to a real census. But anybody at this point in the game could be right.
Agreed. To intertwine that with something else you mentioned, which was overcoming things, right? Like you talk about the valley of death and walking through that. That's what makes, again, us as a country so awesome, is because we're so resilient. When we have those hard times and our backs are up against the wall and we don't know the outcome, that's what makes us so powerful as a country, because we unite and together we're all going to get through this. It's an interesting thing. I think going back to your chart, that was an awesome thing you shared. And I think as we learn more information and the numbers of cases and unfortunately deaths rise, it changes where we're at a little bit. At first I was more probably towards a 4, but now I'm probably right in the middle. I'm a 3. I think maybe a little bit's overblown, but I also realize the severity of it at the same time.
I think it's wise to not be probably on either one of those spectrums. It's wise to just pay attention to the details and formulate an intelligent response and answer, but also be like, if somebody says, hey, I should probably stay home, I want to go play golf, but I'm not sure. My dad is elderly and I've got to help him or whatever. Be cognizant of those situations. And one situation actually rose about a week ago with a parent's friend, where his daughter was having a baby. He started getting a cough. His daughter I think there was a living arrangement where it was like, okay, the baby's coming home here, dad's sick, he's got nowhere to go except for grandma and grandpa's house, but he's got a cough. He was in the 48-hour testing period. At that point in time, that's the fastest test they could get him for coronavirus. But it's like, do I stay home and have the baby come home and try to isolate upstairs, or go to my parents' house who are elderly and they're like 80s, 90s? Like, those are tough situations. That's
tough.
a real life. Like, that's my parents, a real good friend. And it's like, where's he going to go? Who's going to take him in?
What do you do?
So there are a lot of people out there that they may be stuck, but I personally have taken the stance of just follow the guidelines of the CDC, like wash hands, don't touch your face, social distance. Like, it really is hard for me, but we found ways, talking to neighbors from a distance, having more family time, a lot of porch time, yard work, projects in the house. That sort of thing has been really great. So,
and to go back and kind of give that message of hope again, you mentioned how we're going to look back on this at some point and say to ourselves, we made it through, and it won't seem like right now in the moment, like you were saying, it seems really hard. It seems really tough, and, we don't have answers. But a lot of folks are comparing this to the swine flu, H1N1 back in 2009.
Yeah.
And a lot of people will also tell you, I don't even really remember that back in 2009. We're going to say that one day about coronavirus, maybe not like H1N1 because the numbers could be significantly higher when it's all said and done. But still, when you're in that present moment, everything, it's magnified, right?
Yeah.
And then when we look back, we'll say, oh, yeah, it was a couple weeks or a couple months, whatever it is. But still, we won't remember it like we do now.
Yeah.
So lots of takeaways.
And we all look forward to that day where we look back and say, oh, man, I remember again, a neighbor picking his weeds from a distance, when I was waving him as I was getting the mail, he said, one day there's going to be books written about this time. And I'm thinking, wow, yeah, I mean, it's unprecedented for sure. And I don't know, again, I don't know if anybody knows how bad it's going to be. It could drop tomorrow or it could double tomorrow. We just don't know. So
it's going to be interesting to see the long-term changes that come from this. You mentioned social distancing, and you hear people even saying now, like, traveling for work is going to be different now with the video conferencing that we have. Shaking hands may be even different. It's going to put us in a whole different world that we're living in, but I don't think it's necessarily bad. It's just going to be different.
Right.
So
exactly. With the businesses, I mean, I've been happy to see Amazon booming. The pizza restaurants are making a killing. And to see the innovation. And I think that's America kind of at its core. I'm super proud as an American that, once we started taking this coronavirus serious, that's when the vaccine started going. That's when the medicine started going. That's when with the press conferences daily, the ventilators, GM stepped up, Ford, what's the company? Dyson invented a brand new ventilator.
Just the pillow guy.
What's that?
I can't think of My Pillow. The My Pillow. He's now doing things to help out. I think he's manufacturing ventilators. So the owner of the Patriots came back from China with 1 million masks. So it is awesome to see what everyone's chipping in.
And in such a short period of time, I mean, literally a matter of weeks, people look at the devastation. But these are, I've heard to it referred to a lot as wartime. And it does feel like that in a way. I mean, luckily, like I said, it's not like there's bombs dropping on us here. It could be a lot worse. But, man, to see these companies innovate and just totally transform their factories and basically lose money to make a product that's going to save people's lives. Ford, I mean, come on.
Absolutely. I think growing up, I was more of a pessimist, but now I'm more of an optimistic person. I like to see the glass half full.
Yeah.
And again, during these times, right, there's a lot that we could say, wow, this is going bad. But to allude to what you just mentioned, to see people stepping up, and are we making everybody? I mean, are we all making the right decisions all the way to the top, to the president? Is he making all the right decisions? No. But it's awesome to see all of these people chipping in and contributing what they can, because everyone's trying to do their best. If they make a decision that's not the best, it wasn't on purpose. They're trying to cure this thing so we can save as many lives as we can.
Absolutely. So let's give a shout out to your company. I know right now we're working on some domain stuff, but you should still be able to get an email and your website. So What's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
Directly through my cell phone for right now, 704-657-7363. Email works great, michael@mscottgroup.com, and that's michael at mscott, SCOTT, group, GROUP.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on, man. It was a pleasure. It's a lot of fun. I'm sure since at least you're close and can walk over, we'll do some more podcasts and quarantine and socially distance together.
That's right.
That's a thing.
We'll be in quarantine mode. I really appreciate tonight, though.
Yeah.
This is awesome. Anytime you want me to come over and, just sometimes we sit out front of our house and talk, and that's basically what this podcast is. And
that's right.
If we can just help somebody out there to give them a ray of hope, and maybe, if you need any help and you're nearby in Davidson, give us a shout. We'll be glad to do that for you.
Absolutely. Thanks, man. Have a good one.
Hey.
Talk to you soon.